Flip, then flop. That is the topic of tonight's byline. Justin Trudeau has flip-flopped when it comes to pot and immigration. Should we really be surprised? Look, I've been covering politics for a long time. Accusing a politician of flip-flopping, well, it almost doesn't register anymore. Even politicians, like every politician to some degree, will change their minds on one topic or another. Stephen Harper did it with income trust. Jean Chrétien did it on tearing up the free trade agreement. But some politicians, they're masters at the flip-flop, changing their position so often it's hard to keep up with them. Paul Martin, you might remember him. He was Premier, Prime Minister for a couple of months. He was a master at this. His position on any issue was whatever you wanted to hear. His top priority was your top priority, and it was so bad that his opponents were able to easily mock him with having so many top priorities in their campaign ads. Justin Trudeau appears to be going the Paul Martin route. He has a ton of priorities, and his positions change depending on who he's talking to. I'm not sure why he's talking policy at all, really, when all he has to do is smile and flip his hair into the wind. But Trudeau wants to be taken seriously as a thinker and as a policy guy, so he keeps talking policy. And, well, if people at home are keeping score, that could get him in trouble. First, let's look at his positions on pot. We know Justin used to love smoking the spliff. Why? Because his old smoking buddy, Canada's Prince of Pot, Marc Emery, talked about it.
Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, for better or worse, depending on how you feel, smoked hashish. And his son has smoked with me 4 or 5 times, so it really pisses me off when I see Justin Trudeau, who took big daggers with me, is in Parliament actually voting for Bill C-15. What a hypocrite. What a guy. I know.
Smoking big baggers. If you don't know, apparently that's a type of pot. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm old and square, or actually, I'm the same age as Justin, but I don't smoke big baggers. Anyway, he used to smoke up with Canada's Prince of Pot, but then he was voting for tougher sentences for people who grow and sell pot. Then last year, while campaigning to be Liberal Party leader, he told a group of high schoolers in PEI that he was a huge supporter of decriminalization. Now he doesn't like decriminalization. He wants to go further.
I see my friend waving a sign about decriminalizing cannabis. I'll take that as a question. I'm actually not in favor of decriminalizing cannabis. I'm in favor of legalizing it, tax and regulate. It's one of the only ways to keep it out of the hands of our kids, because the current war on drugs, the current model is not working. We have to use evidence and science to make sure that we're moving forward on that.
Tougher sentences, decriminalization, legalization, tax and regulate. Which is it, Justin? He doesn't know. That's the true answer. He said he also doesn't know whether he would legalize harder drugs. If the Canadian public were to take a dim view of legalizing pot, would he change his mind again? Probably. Well, that's what he's done on immigration. I remember covering the immigration committee where Justin Trudeau showed up because, well, he was the critic and he'd show up to committee now and again. And he was blasting the Conservatives for not bringing in enough immigrants. This is what he told me. He said, I think we can look at getting over the 250,000, that's 250,000 immigrants per year, over the 250,000 mark, up to approaching 1% of our population, if not going beyond that. That was November 2010. 1%. 1% of our population should be our immigration target. That's interesting. Given that our population has been sitting around 34 million since that time, Trudeau was essentially advocating for bringing in nearly 100,000 more people per year. So instead of 250,000 per year, we'd bring in 350,000 per year, plus the roughly 250,000 or more foreign students and foreign workers that we bring into the country each and every year. So Trudeau wants more people, a lot more people, unless he doesn't. When Enviro guru David Suzuki said Canada was full and the country's immigration policy was disgusting, Trudeau refused to say anything negative about Suzuki.
There is a way to reconcile legitimate concerns about environmental sustainability and Canada's continued openness and strength around immigration.
He did go on to attack Conservatives for attacking Suzuki and defending high immigration levels. So what is it? Does Trudeau want more people in the country or less? In 2010, he wanted a lot more people. In 2013, he won't contradict the idea that Canada is full. See, it all depends on where he is and who he's talking to. Yesterday in Vancouver, Trudeau changed his mind again. Now Trudeau wants more people. Again, he's back to more people, but he doesn't want workers. He wants grannies coming over.
Liberals understand that bringing over parents and grandparents is a part of how we build strong communities and how we build a stronger Canada. This government only looks at people as workers and in the narrow possible way possible. Liberals understand that our new Canadians are nation builders, not just units of production, and that's something that I am committed to reversing in the future.
Really, Liberals, they're all about families, not like those mean Conservatives. Let me explain something to you here. When we bring in economic class immigrants, that's most of the immigrants we bring in, and they come with their families, they all count as economic class immigrants. To put this very plainly, if I lived overseas, wanted to come to Canada, brought my whole family with me, my wife and 4 kids would all count as economic class immigrants, not family class. Trudeau wants to lower the number of economic class immigrants, the number of workers for the jobs we have, and he wants to bring in more grannies. What's next? Reviving Ruby Dalla's bill to give OAS to grannies pensions, OAS pensions after 3 years in the country? Trudeau desperately wants to be liked. He desperately wants to be taken seriously as a thinker. Unfortunately, he's not up to the job. And that's the byline. One of the arguments from people that want to legalize pot is, hey, I smoked when I was young, it's no big deal. Our next guest, Gavin McInnes, will take issue with that idea. Gavin joins us now from New York. Young man, you used to smoke when you were young, didn't you? You've tried a few different drugs in your time?
Yeah, well, back in Ottawa in the 90s and 80s, we would do bottle tokes where you'd put hash into a giant bottle and inhale it like that.
Along the way, and I get this from a piece that you wrote for Tacky's Mag, which I link to from time to time, back in April. You decided that you'd given up pot a long time ago, and you decided to go and try it again to see whether it was the same stuff as you remembered. Why did you give it up, and what was it like when you tried it again?
I gave it up because I have kids now, and you're not off the clock when they go to bed because they often have nightmares. And my daughter called me in once. She was having a nightmare about a giant rock that had no face or anything, but it could telepathically terrorize you. And I started a bad trip, and I actually had to get in bed with her and cower next to her for fear of this gigantic rock. So that was it for pot. I tried it again very recently to see if it was different because I was going to write about legalization. And it is very different, very, very different.
So this, I remember probably about 15 years ago starting to hear about really potent strains, that they'd up the THC content, the active component in pot that gives you the high. And people started talking about wheelchair pot or this pot, it'll paralyze you. That's not the light, mild buzz that the boomers of the Woodstock generation want everyone to think about. How intense was it when you tried pot back in the spring?
I've tried a lot of drugs, and I'm not exaggerating. It was the same as a bad acid trip on LSD. I was so scared I wanted to call 911, but the thought of getting into a gurney and going into an ambulance was too petrifying. My hands and feet went numb. I had to take my shirt off and lie on the floor of my office because the floor is cement and it was cold.
So what do you say then to people that say, well, let's legalize it because it's no big deal?
I say, okay, I understand that argument, and I think I'm the same way, but you understand it's the exact same as saying I want LSD to be legal. And the other thing you should do, too, is I'm for legalization, but that doesn't mean pot is a good thing. Pot kills your ambition. It does give you brain damage. It prevents the part of your brain that develops ambition, so it does screw up your life. You have to treat it as a vice, even though it's legal. And this pot is a totally different drug than even the pot of 10 years ago.
I remember working with this guy. We were roughly the same age. We're going through school together. He had all kinds of ambition, and this is before pot got as intense as you're describing now, and he became what his friends called chronic. Every single day. He couldn't get through a day without smoking up. The next thing you know, he has no ambition. He's barely showing up to work. He drops out of school. He doesn't give a crap about anything else except finding the next high. And that started with pot. And people will say, look, Lily, you're exaggerating. It's not a gateway drug. It's just fine. No, that was just with the pot. That was before he got into the ecstasy and everything else. His ambition was dead.
Right. You don't get cirrhosis of the liver. You don't have a heart attack like crack. You don't to completely deplete your immune system like heroin. But it is a physical thing that it does to your brain, and that is a very serious thing. All my college friends that smoke pot are still single, bartending, skateboarding, smoking pot every single day, and it's sad.
So what would your solution be? I mean, here's my view on the whole legalization. Mine is more of a realpolitik. I'm not big on saying, well, we've got to keep the war on drugs going, but I'm not big on saying, let's get rid of it. My view is you take the cash cow away from the mob, and they're going to start pushing something else. So this is kind of a detente with the mob. Let them sell their pot, and then they're not shoving as much heroin into the system as they would if you took away this cash cow. What would your answer be?
Well, I know LSD sales are going to go down if you legalize pot, because that's what it is. Yes, whether you're pro-pot or anti-pot or pro-drugs or anti-drugs, the basic truth of it is that it's inevitable, it's already there. Why let it support crime? All you're doing is taking the crime element out of it by legalizing it. Now, I still think it's bad, and I still think it's way more intense than it's ever been. So it's two new things, but it's impossible to argue with the logic. So, no, I don't agree with Trudeau that we should regulate it and get the government involved. They screw up everything. I don't have to go to the pot store the way you got to go to the beer store. But let's get it out of the hands of criminals and let everyone else ruin their lives with it. They already are.
All right, Gavin, good talking to you. We'll chat again soon. Email me your thoughts on Trudeau's comments. Is pot a good thing? Pot a bad thing? Do you want it legalized, not legalized? Byline at sunmedia.ca.